Hello, I'm Tim Smith with the Adams County Historical Society. Today, we're standing on Seminary Ridge, the site of the Schmucker House on the campus of the Lutheran Theological Seminary. If you like the content that we've been putting up on our YouTube page and Facebook, please hit the subscribe and like buttons. On the afternoon of July 1st, 1863, there was heavy fighting on this ridge. The old dorm of the Lutheran Seminary dates from 1832, and the Schmucker House was probably built right afterwards, around 1833. The founder of the Lutheran Seminary at Gettysburg, Samuel Simon Schmucker, lived here at the time with his wife. Prior to the battle, Schmucker had learned of the Southern invasion and feared for his safety. He was an outspoken abolitionist among the Lutheran Church hierarchy. Schmucker fled, but his wife and stepchildren lived here at the time of the battle, and there was heavy fighting around this building on July 1st. According to Schmucker, the Southerners entered the building, they ransacked the house, they actually bayoneted a painting of his father that was hanging in the house. They took his library, threw books out the window, burned some of the books in a pile. As a matter of fact, the Lutheran Seminary has one of the books that was actually thrown into the pile, then replaced onto the shelf of his library with some notes written in it from the Confederate soldier. On July 2nd and 3rd, this ridge was occupied by the Southern Army, and Southern artillery was positioned right here on the ridge, shelling Cemetery Hill. And for anybody who's stood on this ridge, you know, Seminary Ridge is in range of Cemetery Hill. And on the second and third day of the battle, there was a violent artillery duel between the units positioned here. According to Samuel Simon Schmucker himself, in a letter written in 1864, the injury done to the property of the institution is considerable. The house I occupied was most damaged. The rebels, having driven the occupants out on the first day of the battle, took possession of it themselves, and their batteries were planted in the immediate vicinity. It was unavoidably shattered by Federal artillery from Cemetery Hill. 13 cannonballs or shells pierced the wall. And I guess it should not be surprising that this is one of the houses in the town that today has an artillery shell sticking out of the southern wall. And we're actually looking at the rear of a 10-pound Parrott shell. And of course, it appears to be planted in the building from the direction of Cemetery Hill. Now, when you look at older photographs of the building, it's obvious, though, that the artillery shell is planted right where a window would have been at the time of the Civil War. And there are two windows on this side of the house that have been pulled out and re-bricked over with post-war bricks, maybe during the time that it was repaired, the building. Now, one interesting thing is I don't have a specific account about this particular shell being in this building. And this always kind of amazed me. I spoke to a bunch of battlefield tour guides, and they assured me that the shell had been in the building as early as anyone could remember. But after the publication of an article that I did on the artillery shells in the building, which appeared in our journal in 1996, Fred Wentz approached me. Fred Wentz had grown up in this building. His father, Abdel Wentz, had actually written a little booklet about this house. And in his booklet, he does not mention anything about there being an artillery shell sticking out of the house. And Fred wrote me a letter, so I'd have the documentation, that the shell was not in the house in his early memories when he grew up here. So he suspected that after the family had moved away and he'd relocated, that it was put in here later. So we're not sure exactly when it occurred, but Probably this artillery shell was planted in the building at some later date to mark where an artillery shell hit the building during the battle.